like jump out of the water. And with the artificial breach, that wasn't as apparent. Like there were fish around, but it didn't have that same sense of anticipation. So it opened and the water went out, and you certainly saw fish go by, but it didn't feel like they were like gathered waiting for it. So I don't know. I think it's probably like a slower process when they open it artificially than when there's like the build up to the natural opening. So,
Okay.
but I think it stayed open. It didn't stay open very long, but I would assume it was long enough.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah, cool.
Thank you.
Sure. I'm glad that part wasn't recorded.
Actually, it was, but that's okay.
Paul Golembeski had to go, called, and he said he had to go to a emergency electrical hookup for somebody, so he's going to join us late. He hoped to join us late. So I guess maybe we should get going. Carol, are you willing to take the roll call?
Oh, sure, if you'd like. Let's see, at the moment, I will recognize that we have Carol Lynn Trocchi, we have John Gwynn, we have Rob Mara, we have Sue Terrio, we have Tony Texera, Sheila McIntosh, Chief Petrin, and Chief Rains, all on record at the moment.
Fantastic.
Okay.
I guess we should begin then. Does anyone have any comments about the minutes to the last meeting? That'd be October 27th. Sue did a terrific job of taking notes, as usual, as always.
Who always does.
Yep.
I noticed an N was missing from Carol Lynn a couple times in the body of the minutes, but
Oh,
minor detail.
sorry, Carolyn.
It's okay.
It's easier to call her Carol.
Do we have anyone that would like to make a motion to accept the minutes?
So moved.
Chief Rains, thank you. Anyone second?
Sheila,
Sheila, thank you. Does anybody in opposition? Then the ayes have it. Thank you very much. First item on the agenda is updating the RFP. Tony very kindly stayed late one night, and we went over a draft of a RFP, which basically we have sent over to the legal department to check on. There's a couple of questionable elements, but basically the bids we're basically have sent the proposal. The proposal is to solicit a engineer, particularly structural engineer, and we're trying to get the bids to be opened on the 17th of December by the town council. The basic, it has several phases, one concept phase, one design phase, then bidding, and then construction supervision. There's a slight complexity in that we're not sure whether we're going to have the money to do all 5 elements at once. The 5 are the repair 2 bridges, repair to the road, deal with the stepping stones, and also put in a new pedestrian bridge that would move the beautifully made Arkin Bridge. So we're trying to figure out with council is exactly how the proper reimbursement would be for supervision if we have to separate that into 2 sections. I think the most critical element, and we're going to be requiring a pre-bid or a conference on site in early December with each potential engineer to make sure that they totally understand the scope of work and so on, so they can give us a good bid, and hopefully that we will assuage any nervousness that they might have, so they would give us a good price. Probably the critical element that most of us are interested in is the wording: when construction is complete, all shall resemble as much as possible the existing dry stone rustic construction, but be supported by durable means that meet modern needs. And later it talks about keeping rural existing aesthetic. That seems like that's consistent with what we said at the last meeting. So I presume everybody's happy with that.
I would change the word needs to modern whatever, but it's not a need, is it? It's
Well, I don't know whether we may have some safety requirements that may be out of date.
why don't you say modern methods rather than needs?
Because I don't think it's just methods, because it might be safety. Is that a method?
I don't know. It's just seems like an inappropriate word, needs.
Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't sound like an engineering word.
No.
Can you read the sentence again, John?
Sure. When construction is complete, all shall resemble as much as possible the existing dry stone rustic construction, but be supported by durable means that meet modern needs.
How about standards?
Yeah.
Modern standards.
Standards.
Yeah.
I like that better. Was any?
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, okay, good. That's good. So I guess we have to first wait to see what our lawyer counsel says. It's only 2 pages of mostly boilerplate.
Mhm.
So, and as I said, the 5 elements: repairing the 2 bridges and the road. And then if we have money later, stepping stones and a new bridge. So we'll have to see what the recommendations are, stepping stones. Tony and I didn't want to be too obvious in thinking about 2 phases because we thought that might make it more complicated. So, but we're trying to leave our option to do 2 phases if we have to. So, a reason I say 2 phases is because we don't know about cost. Rob, can you tell how we're going to be requesting that the engineer give us a cost estimate for construction at the end of concept phase and design phase, but I don't know how reliable their estimating is likely to be, particularly at a concept phase when it's still very not explicit. From the town landing, did you require estimates?
No, we didn't. We made our own estimate because we had some earlier attempts to look at what it would cost.
Yep.
And basically I used those early attempts and we came pretty close to what it actually came out to be with the final bid. But we also had an early RFP last November, and those bids were half of what they eventually came in at. Our low bid last November was about $42,000. That same bidder who won the bid eventually is up to around $80,000. So I think you're right. No matter whether it's the engineer or the people who don't have the final plans, the bids aren't that reliable.
Or the estimates aren't that reliable.
Right. Well, neither are the bids, because if you get a bid early and you don't have the money, then you have to let the bid go. See, we had a bid early for $46,000 or whatever, but we didn't have the money.
Yeah.
So we just rebid it when we got the grant. So it's both the estimate and whatever. Yeah. So they're not reliable.
You had to rebid and the price went shooting up.
Right. Well, and the plan was more complex, so that's part of it.
Yeah. So I presume we're going to have it's going to be tricky to balance trying to come up with proposals to the town and DEM for costs until we know what the costs are. So
Well,
the final.
the big question is, regardless of the plan and the estimate, is where is the money to do the work coming from?
Exactly. Well, we don't know yet.
Mhm.
I think that, as been suggested, we essentially follow your leadership in having proposal into the town, having a proposal into DEM, and having a town-wide solicitation. But
I think the issue is taking the money from DEM says that Wilbur Woods cannot be just for Little Compton town residents.
yep, it's going to be hard to make that decision if we don't have a, if we don't, and many of us would like to have it town residents only. But I think it's going to be hard to, well, we'll have to see. It depends what the bids are, I guess.
Yeah, but I mean, if you look at the cost of a bridge, I don't know what that bridge on Long Highway is costing, but I bet it's $100,000. So you need two bridges and you need other work. You're probably in the $250,000 to $350,000 range.
I'm afraid
And-
that may be true. I'm hoping that we can come up with a simpler solution than that bridge, which I went to see. And
Yeah,
and I'm going to go talk to the person who built it and ask him what the,
Right.
what the real costs are, and how, and ask for, how much of it was the concrete slabs that spanned the
Yeah.
stream. But there's a lot of precast elements. I'm hoping we can get away with
right.
something that's has less concrete showing, and also, well, we'll see.
I think, it's not unlikely that we couldn't raise the money privately. But that's a whole different way of approaching how we get the money.
Yeah,
If we have to raise the money privately, I mean, I'm kind of shocked at how much money we've been able to raise for the landing. And I only basically took a portion of the town to solicit just the plats around the landing. And we're going to raise $80,000. I'm not 80. We're going to raise $50,000 to $60,000.
yeah,
So if we went to the whole town and private, companies like Bay Coast Bank and other companies who are active in town, it's possible we could raise $400,000.
well,
Forget about foundations. They're not going to give the town, Rhode Island Foundation typically doesn't fund town projects
yeah,
when the town has taxing ability.
The Nature Conservancy raised $650,000 for the boardwalk at Dundry Brook when
Yeah,
working
so
on
it is
that.
possible. So,
well, maybe, well, I'm hoping we don't have to do quite that high, but let's see. I guess it's going to be, we're never going to really have a handle on the estimate until we go out to bid at least the first time. So I don't know. Do you think it's even worth putting the RFP, asking for estimates?
sure, why not? I mean, you can get some rough.
In theory, the engineer will probably have to do more work and push his or her price up.
Yeah.
But is it worth, paying the extra money for the RFP if it gives us information which we don't think is?
Well, that's what I'm saying. You kind of have to think ahead. If you're thinking grant, but let's say we're not thinking grant, then people will want to know what the size of the project is
Yep.
Mhm.
in order to raise monies, in order to set a goal.
Yeah.
So I say, yeah, you're going to need estimates.
All right, well, let's try it. I wish I felt confident about them, but at least they give us something to work from.
Sure.
So, all right, that's good. So, I think we've already approved to send out the RFP to in previous minutes to get an engineer. I don't know if we even need a vote, but is there any more discussion about this?
John, could I just ask a question?
Yep.
So you said that right now the RFP is with the lawyer.
Yep.
And then
Solicitor.
The solicitor.
solicitor, okay.
Yep.
And and that the town council will, you're hoping they will open?
The process is that the town, when we're ready to send the RFP out, Carol Wardell will send it out to for open bidding. And we will concurrently with that, if we know anybody that we think would be a good engineer, we can inform them that there is open bidding. So because we want everybody that we think would be good to know that it's gone out. And then they would all have to show up. I think it's December 4th at the, I'll have to check on the actual date, but at Wilbur's Woods, where Tony and I and others would basically go through any questions, would describe the work, tell them our committee's intent, the town's intent, et cetera, et cetera. Then they would have bids due on the 17th of December. Those dates aren't set in stone yet because we haven't got the answer from our solicitor yet. That may take a while. And then the bids would all be delivered to Carol Wardell seal bids. I can give you all this information for the minutes. With the seal bids would go to Carol Wardell, who would bring them to the town council that evening, and then they would be opened in public and read out to the bids would be read out, and then I guess they would go back to the clerk's office to be examined by Tony at length to make sure of qualifications, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay, that really helped clarify the process.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. And then but that would be just a proposal for engineering, and we would have to examine that. And then we would, the way the wording would be that if we don't have the money to buy all the phases, such as construction phase, we could still begin, and hopefully we have enough money with the 12,005 to begin on the concept phase. And in that case, we'd be asking them to move right along with that. I think we have quite a, telling them that's due on the 17th of January so that we could move right along. But some of those dates are fungible right now. So, but after that, we don't know what the dates would be, but we're trying to get it started.
Okay. And
John?
then Sheila has her hand.
Yep. Hi, Sheila.
Hi, John. How will we be getting a copy of the RFP?
Well, it's not done yet, but we would
But
get,
no, when it's ready.
I guess we would get that from Tony or from me, I guess. If you'd like to see it, I'd be happy to share it with anybody. I don't know if
No, when it's been reviewed,
okay.
I could pick it up at the town hall, got all the open meetings thing.
Just
Well,
You
you
know.
can bid on it.
No, I don't think so. No.
Yeah. Rob,
I
Yeah,
have
just
one,
email it.
excuse me?
You can email it to everyone, right?
I can email it.
Yeah.
I
Is
think,
that okay, Carol?
Yes.
okay,
Okay.
all right,
As long
good.
as you don't respond to each other about it, it's okay to send it out.
Okay,
Okay. And
Okay.
I have one other fine point. Responding to your comment, John, about wishing that the woods would be for residents only. And my understanding was that in the vision statement, Sue, you worked on this,
Right.
keeping Wilbour Woods in the wild and natural state that the Lloyd family wanted all visitors to experience, and that's what we voted to approve. So am I on the same page here? I mean, or not on the same page?
Heather sent me, and you sent me some of the minutes of the Garden Club minutes from the 50s and 60s.
Yeah.
And it sounded like the original deed was for town residents only, but I have no idea in the sands of time if that's still true, the case, or if it's defensible.
So I know currently the woods are used by non-residents. I mean, you see Massachusetts cars driving through. And other states besides Massachusetts, but I also think it's an enforcement piece. I mean, the landing technically is supposed to just be for Little Compton residents too, but it's just these things aren't enforceable. And so they are ultimately used by all, which is a concept I personally endorse. But we could go back to the deed, which I have a copy of that deed, and we could see what the original intention was.
Heather has something she'd like to say.
Heather?
So it was the town council that voted, and I don't have the document. I'm sorry, I'm late. I'm not prepared, but it was the town council that voted to restrict it to town residents only. So that's, it's not the deed.
Oh, okay.
It's what, because of, well, there was a lot of usage, and that's when people were using the fireplaces, and people from out of the Lions Club ran the fireplaces, and people couldn't park. Town residents couldn't get in there because other people from out of town were taking the places. So I just foresee some increased use in the woods with nice new bridges. And I don't know what, if the council is going to want to get involved and keep it the way. I don't know if another vote, since the one I sent you, John, about
Thank you very much.
restricting it to residents, if they went further, that would take some digging, but I don't know what the status is now. I just am concerned it be just like Lloyd's Beach. The parking there is a nightmare.
Oh, yeah, this is, Lloyd's Beach is just blown up this year.
Well, they're turning around in anybody's driveway. I mean, we walk there regularly, and we see with all this nice weather, how that's played out. And I just think we have an opportunity to think about Wilbour Woods before it gets out of control.
John?
I have in the documents that you guys sent me, I have the Town of Little Compton Municipal Code that says regulating the use of public recreational areas. It says Wilbour Woods Ordinance, blah, 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 1978. Wilbour Woods should be the use of town residents only.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
So
I just looked at the deed, and it's consistent with what Heather's describing. It was obviously a town council zoning decision, not a deeded decision. So it can be changed or kept the same based on the town's will.
So what happened with the landing is the will that left the land was obvious, open to all, and not definitive, restricting it to Little Compton residents. Then the town passed the ordinance, I think it was in 83 or something like that, whatever it was, for Wilbour Woods and the town landing. But once we applied for the grant, the town council had to certify that in perpetuity, the landing would be open to everyone. So that was how the landing became open. And there were always issues of enforcement. It was difficult for the police or anyone to enforce just having town residents use it. And it was never an issue before it became popular. So it, it just, if you ask for money from the state, it's going to have to be open.
Yep.
And, we don't have to ask for money from the state, and you can keep it for town residents, but then you have all the issues of enforcement.
Johnny?
Yep.
I went to the Historical Society and looked at Dicey Atwater's big binders of lots of garden club minutes and lots of photographs and news articles. And I didn't spend a whole lot of time, but in June of '66, the council closed the woods to non-residents because residents couldn't find a place to park. But wouldn't you know, the photographs that she took of the trash, Dicey took of the trash in there after it was closed was horrendous. So eventually that just sort of faded away.
Yep.
And at one point, a footbridge, 1938, was put in because of the invasion of evergreen seekers at Christmas. I thought that was,
gee.
and then 2 bridges were put back. So it's kind of fun to look at those things. But I hope it's not closed. I hope we support what we voted on a while back.
That's interesting.
It is interesting. Well, I think the issue is going to come up when we know how much money we
Right.
need to raise. Then I guess.
Certainly doesn't affect the planning. You know,
No, it doesn't.
we still need a plan, and then
Yeah.
we'll have to get
Yeah,
advice from the town council.
I'm game for kicking the can down the road till we see where we are on money and how much we need and so on. So
Heather has some,
I'd like to say that comparing Wilbur Woods to Town Landing is not possible. The
that's
plant life and the whole environment of Wilbur Woods is totally sensitive to traffic, foot traffic, whatever. Town Landing is it's going to look lovely, but it's been a flat surface people have parked on for years. So I think we need to consider what could happen to Wilbur Woods. And I'm frankly worried about having it open to anybody and everybody.
The key is, how do you enforce town residents only?
Well, I think they did before when they closed it to only town residents. I don't know. I don't mean to be anti the world. I'm just really concerned about Wilbur Woods and it be maintained as the ecologically sensitive, beautiful area it is.
I would just say quick, I know this is something that's going to take a while to hash out, but I share, Heather, your concerns about overuse or misuse, certainly. I don't think realistically, I think it would be very challenging to try and enforce a restriction on town residents versus anybody else in this day and age. That's what we're challenged by at the beach right now that's coming up, that's creating heartbreaking difficulty in managing that resource. And it's very similar. I spend a lot of time in Wilbur Woods, and I can tell you for certain it gets a lot of regular use by a pretty consistent set of people in addition to new people. They are not all town residents. And at this day and age, there's no keeping something we've always sort of relied on, like, let's just keep it on the down low and not tell anybody that it's there. And that's how we'll maintain a town residence situation. And that's what's no longer possible, which is why we're facing this challenge at the Landing, Lloyd's, South Shore. And I think you're right to be concerned, because I think it will be an issue for Wilbur Woods too. But what we do about it is, I think, up for grabs.
I sort of felt that the potholes on the entrance road to Wilbur's Woods do a pretty good job of discouraging people that don't know.
They do. And that's sort of always
You're
been.
not asking for those to be repaired, I noticed.
And no internet access.
Mhm.
Oh, yeah, put a no Wi-Fi sign up. That might be, yeah, anyway. All right. Okay, well, we'll send out the RFP when we get it. Carol, Lynn, and Jason, do you guys want to talk about? We would a maintenance plan. Would you like to share any thoughts or defer that, whichever?
I'd love to let Jason talk about that, but he's not here.
All right.
I have not heard from anyone. We brought it up last time. So I have a sort of growing laundry list of the things that come to my mind that we might want to have a plan to address. I'm happy to share them with folks, but I really haven't had any input or heard anything from anyone else.
Well, would you prefer to defer that to another meeting, next meeting?
Totally up to you guys. I mean, that's fine. If people have suggestions, I'm glad to collect them. That was kind of what I offered to do last time. Otherwise, I can share with you my list as a starting point and you can add to it and we can plan time where we just talk through that. If
Why
that's,
don't you, it sounds exciting. Why don't we start?
Mhm.
So what do you think? What are you thinking, Carolyn?
what I have in front of me is just a bulleted list that has 3 basic categories being habitat management, use management, and infrastructure management. So I think considering, and these are just sort of things we've already been talking about in an effort to kind of put them into boxes. Under habitat management, the question of maintaining cleared areas to prevent invasive species encroachment. So deciding how to do that, you know, there are things that have been historically done that can't be undone in the management plan from 10 years ago. There was that delineation of sort of the human altered area and the recommendation that that area has to be managed differently just because of its history, but should maybe not be expanded upon. And instead we can look at that and say, okay, you know, this being what it is, how do we, what kind of regular annual maintenance is required to maintain this? Forest regeneration is obviously a real issue. We had talked at some point in the past about as a means both for public education and maybe just sort of an inquiry into the state of forest regeneration or lack thereof in Wilbour Woods, especially in the cleared versus non-cleared areas. It would be kind of a cool demonstration project to do a deer exclosure. So to put up, set up a plot where it's deer fenced and see what grows, see what kind of regeneration is taking place, see what, at least, you know, at some sort of very basic level, see to what degree deer herbivory is curbing regeneration, especially in those cleared areas, because I think that's really the greatest concern. You know, we keep taking out hazard trees and we're cutting down a lot of the understory. So at some point, way down the road for our children and grandchildren, we're not going to have Wilbour Woods anymore. We're going to have a
Wilbour
area
Woods,
that's treeless, right?
singular.
So that was in there. Stream clearing, talking about, you know, whether there's a regular plan for how we make sure we keep debris out of Dundry Brook to help with some of the erosion issues and some of the bridge damage like we've seen happen in the past. And then hazard tree removal. I know Jason's done pretty heavy removal recently. So how we pursue that in the future, just what the plan is for how often we take a look, how many trees we let him cut down, you know, that sort of thing. Use management could probably be lengthy, but the key ones, parking, vehicle traffic, this ATV damage issue, questions about trail planning. There are all of these trails that appear kind of at random. Are they good? Are they bad? Do we want them? Do we want to reduce them? And what do we want on them? Because you make trails and people use them. So are the non-roadway trails meant to be pedestrian only, or is it okay to take bikes or, you know, other uses? Are those okay for more perhaps conspicuous uses that could have a degrading impact?
Carolyn, there's a young landscape architect in town in his late 20s that just bought a high quality drone that he uses for landscape photography. I wonder if we should try and, unless there's already really good maps of Wilbur's Woods, I wonder if we might invest a couple of $100 to get some really high quality. Would that help for trail planning and so on, do you think?
Yes and no. There are maps. The recent aerial photography that was done the last couple of years is pretty good.
Okay, maybe you don't need, maybe that's good enough, yeah.
They haven't all been mapped, but they probably could based on that. I mean, the drone photography is always fun, and it can be even better. It depends when it's done.
Oh, you have to be winter.
Has to be leaf off.
Yeah.
And then I just did a project over in Westerly that was actually really cool with a drone provider who was able to had whatever software is required to ortho-rectify drone photos, which meant that the drone was stable enough and able to capture and then sync to geographic coordinates at a level of accuracy where you could pull it into GIS and actually map right on it. The drone photos that are done for like real estate and stuff, they're beautiful, but if they're taken at an angle or they're not, then it doesn't, you can't pull it right in inch for inch to the ground. So definitely a cool thing to think about, but we just want to make sure, you know, we did it at a standard that would be useful.
Well, it sounds like we should look at the recent ones and see if those are good enough. But I
Yep.
think having a really good maps in winter so we could see these informal trails and would give us a really good tool for doing just what you're talking about.
I can send you a link that would let you view the current best available photographs.
That would be good. Maybe you could send it to everyone.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I can also send everyone this list that I'm reading from now, and people can reflect upon it or add to it or whatever, maybe.
Sorry to interrupt you.
No, I'm winding down here. The only other thing that I was thinking with use management is dog waste. Having seen, and I'm certainly a guilty party here, but having seen
Roger and Gail.
some of the seeing some of the water quality assessments that are coming back for Little Compton from the last state round of stream monitoring. We have really significant issues with bacterial contamination of surface waters, which is not at all surprising. It's totally common statewide, but we just have so much less runoff and impervious surface in general. We've been a little bit we've been safer from that than most places. So somewhere like Wilbour Woods, I mean, it's used by so many dog walkers, things like that. You know, might or whether we try to keep the culture there to be someplace where dog waste is picked up or removed. And then last was just infrastructure management. This was more just again an effort to kind of, is it worth capturing all the things that we've been talking about: bridge maintenance and construction, the stepping stones, the road surface. We know that comes up regularly, parking, and the sedimentation of the pond isn't something this group has spent a lot of time on, but that's been a big issue for Wilbour Woods.
Yep.
Discussions with very emotional opinions, as well as complexities from DEM. In the past, the pond is starting to silt in, which is what ponds that are built behind dams do, as they're doing all across town. And it's a real hassle to obtain permission to clean them out, which is what would have been done, 40 years ago, much harder to do now. But there has at various times been some real vocal desires to see that happen so that it becomes a pond again instead of a marsh, which is kind of what it's becoming now.
Carolyn, when you go to the clearing near the pond, there's a lot of they're not invasive species, but there's a lot of kind of field species that I don't remember as a kid being there. It's kind of scruffy looking, and in my mind's eye, it was always much more woodland species and so on. I wonder if that's all spoil. Was that dredge spoil that was dumped on that clearing area? And
I don't think so. There's a big willow tree there that came down.
Yep.
And that opened up the canopy quite a bit. So that's an area where there has been multiflora rose increasing, but it got all mowed or cut. And once it got cut, a lot of it now is, it's wetland, it's Joe Pye weed and some multiflora still, but it becomes that same thing. Once it's cut and it's not under a tree canopy, then you either have to maintain it or take what comes, and what comes is most likely going to be multiflora rose.
So the pond was dredged. John, that document I sent you.
Yeah.
It has a date when it was dredged, and they ruined all the plantings around the outside. So Lloyd Lawton replanted everything, and that was some time ago, obviously, but it was dredged by the state, I believe. So where they put the spoils, I have no idea. I'm assuming around the edge.
That may have
The edge
created the
isn't that much
problem.
higher though. It's still pretty low. The other issue with the pond is both yellow water lily, which is invasive, and cattails, which is native, are gonna, make
Water lily or yellow iris.
yellow iris, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
will make quick work, and they're just responding to the sedimentation. They're not causing it, but it will certainly, now that they're solidly in there, it'll just happen faster. And then you see a year like this year where the pond was completely empty and growing with all sorts of things for most of the summer. So.
Yep. Well, I think I've written down about 15 different categories, Carolyn, that you've been thinking about. I think we have to spend some time on each one of them, forest regeneration and ideas and so on. So with your permission, maybe we can talk about a couple of each at each one of our meetings, so everybody sort of is thinking about the idea of what is a deer exclosure and things like that, and how do we get trees to regenerate where we want them, etc. But I'd like to not drop those issues, but continue discussing them, it's at other meetings, if that's of interest to everybody in the room.
Oh, yes. My goodness. I also think we're going to need a Friends of Wilbur's Woods fund. I mean, this is obviously what needs to be done there. It's going to be expensive. And I don't know how you do that, but it's certainly an area that I would think some people would donate towards.
Yeah, I think so too. I think that's I think that's a very good comment. Well, we'll do it. Somehow we'll do it.
Carol, I have a question. Is there any work that needs to be done right now that should be done, a high priority, where we could get some volunteers to go in and do the work?
I think that my greatest concern when this committee first started was that I was seeing so much multiflora rose encroaching in on the roadsides. But Curtis and his crew, has been able to sort of take that on as part of their regular, the Public Works has always been sort of responsible for Wilbour Woods at whatever level. And he seems totally on board and has been really responsive and made sure that was taken care of. So that was the thing that felt like, oh no, somebody's got to do this. I don't care who it is. I'm in there with clippers because this just can't happen or we won't be able to get it back. I don't really see anything else like that. I mean, I think the rest of these things are longer term and, oh, wouldn't it be great if we sort of had a plan instead of, the road gets done when somebody bitches about their axle or whatever, like that's kind of been the way I think it's happened historically. So well, I don't disagree that, a Friends of Wilbour Woods and a source of resources would be helpful. I also think a lot of this has been happening. It's just been happening piecemeal. So it's more being organized and thoughtful about, how we plan for it in advance, because these things aren't going to go away.
And is reforestation possible with the amount of deer that we have?
I don't know that. I mean, I think that's what we would be dipping our toes into exploring, and that would be a helpful exercise for all of us and as a community, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to, one of the things I'm interested in as well too. I think we should make that a major topic of a future meeting, like what are our options, et cetera, et cetera. I've got, when I was in there a few weeks ago, I noticed a lot of white oak in there, and I don't think of white oak as a native wetland plant of Little Compton or of Wilbur's Woods. I think of it, white oak, as a more of an upland species. I don't know, Carolyn, you may disagree. You may have greater wisdom than I, but it makes me wonder, particularly when I looked at some of the old garden club issues that they talked about planting white oak and other species in there. I was wondering if those were a wetland clone of white oak that had developed over eons in Wilbur's Woods, or whether those were planted, whether
Where were you? Swamp white oak or
no, it was
English white
regular.
oak?
It was just looked like it was regular Quercus alba, I thought. I've been wrestling with my, trying to figure out native grasses to plant, and all of my store-bought native grasses all die. All the ones from the conservation organizations and stuff, they all die. They all drown in the winter. But the clones that I have from Little Compton, which from our own fields, are fine. They sit there in the wet. So it makes me think that that they're very localized. There may be very localized clones that are tolerant of this very wet soil in West Compton. And so, just going to Sylvan Nursery and buying an oak and plunking it there may not be such an easy, may not solve problems. But those are the things that are fun to talk about in future discussions. I throw some plant the seeds of chaos and complexity for future discussion. All right, good. Well, I'd like to put the possibility of deer proofing and tree restoration on the docket for our next meeting, if that's okay with everybody. I think it'll be an interesting. I know I'll learn a lot, so it'd be good.
Deer proofing? Did I hear you correctly?
How do you? Carolyn may disagree, but I see very few of the dominant species that used to be the major trees in Little Compton coming up. I'm presuming that's because there's so many deer that they're eating things like oaks. And where will the future oaks come from if the deer are eating them all? So I think that's something for future discussion. If anybody can do any homework before our next meeting, please bring it to the meeting.
I'm going to send you a link.
Okay. Send us all a link. Thank you. Thank you, Carol Ann. One of the things, next item on the agenda, I guess we're ready to move on, is I think it was how to obtain a town ordinance over the issue of vehicles in the park. Carol Wardell very kindly sent me a recipe book of how do you do a town ordinance. She basically said, just come up with the wording and I'll take care of it going to the town council. Thanks, Carol. Basically, on our October 6th meeting, we voted to use the wording motor vehicles of any count, and this is a wording that was pinched from the existing ordinance preventing vehicles from going on the crossing town beaches. And I think we need to have something in the something to prohibiting motor vehicles from going into the woods, but I'd like to try to make it just get it on the docket without any reason for doing it. I think it's just something that the police probably needs in the future. I'm surprised it didn't have any ordinance, but basically saying motor vehicles of any kind shall not be permitted to leave the roads and parking areas of Wilbur's Woods. This does not apply to emergency or maintenance vehicles.
Sounds good.
I'm hoping we don't have a million rules and regulations, but I think there needs to be something just in the town ordinance so that the police have some jurisdiction, which they don't have right now. But my own hope is that we make it a very low-key ordinance that doesn't have a lot of explanation behind it, shall we say, but just say something that we think we're just bringing crossing our T's and dotting our I's of something that probably should be there. I don't know. Paul, you've joined us. Do you think that this is that we're being overly litigious, or I guess it isn't litigious, overly this is overkill?
I'm not sure the words you just used, but I wouldn't go overboard with anything. I'd defer to the chief on the traffic rules. It's something that would be easily enforced, but it seems to be common sense, except for maintenance and emergency vehicles, and stay on the damn roads.
Yeah, it seems like it's pretty low key to me. Chief Raines, does this make sense to you?
It does. I think if you keep the signage and the ordinance as simple as possible, there's always room for someone to kind of take a latitude with it. But, you know, along with the ordinance, I think the signage is important as well. Maybe something at the beginning of Wilbour Woods, and once you get into the parking area, maybe a couple signs on each end that state that no vehicles beyond this point. So we try to keep people from kind of expanding the parking, so to speak.
Yep. My own personal preference is to minimize the signs for several reasons. One is they have to be replaced. And if you can drop a log or do something that looks natural to keep people off, my own preference is to do that. But I definitely think we need to have something at the entrance, although I hope we don't have a million no smoking, no this, no that, no that, you know, a million signs. But that's just my personal preference.
No, I certainly agree with that. And you know, to keep the signage as less industrial looking as possible and aesthetic to the area is also, you know, I think is important as well.
The concern is that I think we've tried the subtle route with logs and stones. Those are all already in place, which is why this is, you know, a concern, because it's subtle, doesn't seem to have been picked up. I also have the specific question, not so much with the ordinance, but is there anything less than, you know, enforcing through our police staff that we could do just to, does anybody know the neighbor? I mean, the issue that's going on right now is coming directly from an abutting landowner. So is there anyone that could just reach out and have a conversation, or like?
My own preference is to not have the police involved. I like to have good neighbors, and sending the police to your neighbors isn't considered a friendly thing. So my own, you know, we need our neighbors. You know, if the woods are on fire, we want the neighbor to be friendly and call the police and not say screw them. So my preference would be to try to be as friendly as possible to our neighbors and try that.
Right. So I understand why the ordinance needs to be changed and needs to be in place so that the police have the option of enforcing, and that's, you know, a legally permissible thing for them to do. But in the meantime, is there anyone that could, you know, do we want to do anything to inform or educate or chat with or find out who's making the problem now and asking them if they could stop.
Carol, that's been done.
Oh, it has. Okay, thank you. I didn't
So
realize that.
one of my officers went over and spoke with the party in question.
Okay,
And we don't believe, and he has a good relationship with him. I grew up with him, so I tend to take him at his word. That he is not the problem. His children are not the problem, and it could be others entering in. It's my understanding that that family doesn't even own ATVs.
okay,
I could be wrong there, but we've already spoken to him, and he is going to be able to help us out should he see anything
that's
out of
great.
the ordinary that's
That would be
occurring. So
great.
we've already kind of crossed that bridge, so to speak.
Yeah.
Good.
So hopefully that's the end of it, but man, no guarantees.
Yep.
Speaking of crossing bridges,
Exactly.
thank you, Chief Rains. I didn't realize that had taken place. That's great to hear. Just as that seems
I
like
didn't
the most
either.
obvious first step. Maybe that'll help, and we'll have an ordinance in place if it doesn't by that time. But for now, that's great. Thank you. very
Yeah,
much.
sure. I mean, obviously we're going to need the ordinance as well. I think it's
Sure.
just, commonplace. And to go back to the issue of the signs and the subtlety. So my experience with the signage, and, we have the giant electronic signboard that, makes announcements throughout town, and speeding and no parking. It doesn't matter what you put up there, from subtle to a giant billboard, some are going to read it and some aren't. So as long as I think we should stay with, something simple and something aesthetic, and that'll kind of cover all the bases for enforcement, so to speak.
That sounds very sensible to me. Yeah, good. And thank you for talking to the individual. I hope when the ordinance goes in, we don't have to identify that individual or anything, or even say there are any problems. Let's just say we're just putting the ordinance in because we thought we should. It's a small town. I don't think we want people talking. We like to kind of make it as quiet and friendly as possible. But maybe I'm just old-fashioned.
You're
Do
just
we need to-
kind.
What?
You're very kind.
Oh, well, I don't know about that. Thank you. But anyway, should I read this? Why don't I read this wording again? And I think we should probably vote on it. Motor vehicles of any kind shall not be permitted to leave the roads and parking areas of Wilbur's Woods. This does not apply to emergency or maintenance vehicles.
Sounds fine.
It's kind of what was done before.
Mhm.
May I take do we need to have a roll call vote, or?
We need,
How about a motion?
yeah, somebody needs to make.
Okay.
I move the language you read be accepted.
Thanks,
Yes,
Heather. Heather makes a motion. Any second?
Second.
Rob, okay, good. Does anybody disagree? Then I presume the ayes have it. Thank you very much. Not make it easy. Okay, good. The next item was if we're asking our engineer to consider a pedestrian bridge, could I have 2 volunteers that would go to Wilbur's Woods and possibly come up with suggestions of where to put up a pedestrian bridge? I think the only caveat is that it has to be a fairly narrow spot. If we're going to reuse the existing bridge without building abutments inside the stream, which I don't think we want. After talking to DEM, I don't think we want to put structures in the stream if we can avoid it. Do we have any volunteers that would like to?
Let me ask a question. Do we really need a pedestrian bridge there? Or we're just
No.
trying to accommodate the pedestrian bridge that's there that shouldn't be there?
It's a good question. We've asked for what, can we have a discussion about that?
So I did go this weekend, and I went with my husband, and we walked around and tried to figure out where that bridge might be moved to. And we really only came up with one spot, because when you think about where to put the bridge, you want the bridge to connect with something, like either
Yes.
connecting with an existing path or with the
Yep.
road. And the only place we really saw was a little bit downstream of you've got the stepping stones, the waterfall, just go a little bit more downstream, and that would connect the road to the other road, or kind of like the path that would very quickly lead to the road. I don't know if it makes sense aesthetically for it to go there. Ideally, that bridge would take the place of the stepping stones to get you across. Like that would be aesthetically a nice place to put the bridge, but it's just way too wide there from the erosion.
Yeah.
So if you go a little bit downstream, it starts to really narrow again. But I don't know if that would feel, I don't know if that would look great, but that was the only place we came up with, because everywhere else, it's kind of the bridge to nowhere. You know, it just drops you off into a place that has no path or no road. So
Would it be possible to not have the bridge? It seems to me this is a real nightmare situation if we're thinking of having accepted it, or the town accepted it, and now we're saying we don't want it. Wow. How many feathers would that ruffle?
I think it was always supposed to be a temporary bridge,
Oh, good.
but I don't know. Does anyone know the history of that? Paul, do you remember whether that was a temporary bridge?
It was a temporary solution to a problem that we needed to fix. A lot of people were frustrated because they couldn't get across because the other bridge had been shut off for safety reasons. And then to walk to the pond, to walk around, they had this longer walk. And so Arkins just out of the blue volunteered to do it. They said, hey, we can build a bridge across there. You just pay us some materials, we'll do it. So we gracefully accepted what they did, and it got put in. It wasn't put in as a temporary bridge. It wasn't put in as a permanent bridge. It was put in because we didn't know what we were going to do with the bridge, with the car bridge. So temporary, yes. Could it have become permanent? Well, that was discussed, but it wasn't one of the likely outcomes.
Mm-hmm. Well, I guess the pros and cons of a temporary bridge, if it could be somewhere near the center, and I agree with Sue, with you, there are not many places that it can go except just downstream of the waterfall, where it's kind of crowded, but it does at least link to an area of public usage, of benches and so on the other side of the stream. I think the pros are the temporary bridge, if it could be in the center, would get people across when the stepping stones don't work. The downside, I suppose, is awkward location to put it elsewhere, and also cost, because it's probably going to be one of the more expensive things we venture into, because it's going to need new, all new footings and so on. So it's a good.
Let me ask a question.
Yep.
If we were to design what we wanted for Wilbour Woods, would we have a pedestrian bridge?
Good question.
Not
I
if you
happen
have
to
two
like the
roads.
pedestrian bridge myself, but
You what?
I happen to like the pedestrian bridge, but I realize that we need to have to vehicle bridges. I think I don't know, I'm not good with spatially, so I don't know whether there's a spot. There are paths that have been made onto Sakana Preservation property that go around, link back up to the big campsite by the pond. Nobody would see it back there. I'm not sure that that's a priority.
Before
Yeah.
we go too far down this road, would it make sense for someone to talk to Tom and see if he's attached to this? If he has, it could be that he says, oh, I could use that somewhere else. Like, I'll just take it back if you're done with it. I have no idea. But if we're trying to not hurt his feelings or, reject the gift, which I know we don't want to do, maybe that's not as much of an issue as we're assuming it is.
I don't know
If
him
there
well.
isn't a desire and a logical place to put it.
I don't know him well. Is there anyone on the committee that knows him pretty well?
I do. Or actually Sheila too. Yeah.
Would you guys be willing to talk to him?
Is this the time to do it? We don't have a bridge yet. We really still need that pedestrian bridge.
Oh, yeah. And
Oh,
we
definitely.
and when
So
the bids
are
come
we
in,
rushing this?
and when the bids come in, we may not, we may be using that pedestrian bridge for quite a long time.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think it's a little premature.
How about tabling it for a while?
Yeah, I just meant at some point having a casual conversation to
Oh, yeah,
say,
we
the bridge has
definitely,
been great. We have this committee. We're trying to figure out what to do. How do you feel about it? Do you have opinions? Do you have, just to get a sense of whether or not.
He's so nice. He would not be honest.
Oh.
If he was, he's such a nice guy. He wouldn't, if he was offended, he would not tell you.
Yeah.
So
Is
I
there
just
anybody
had-
with big pond with an island in the middle that needs a bridge?
I can think of multiple people.
Oh, you
I
do?
just had
Okay.
I
There
just
you go.
had another thought about where the bridge could maybe go. And when Paul started talking, I remembered the decrepit homemade bridge that Tom's Bridge replaced. Paul, do you remember that bridge?
Oh, yeah, the plywood and 2x4s, the sliding death trap of doom over the bridge, yes.
Right. So where the sliding death trap was, that was actually not a bad place for a bridge.
Right.
I haven't looked at it in a while, but
It's
I
all
mean,
wetlands.
is it all wetlands? You don't want people walking through there. Okay, that makes sense, Carol. Okay.
And
It's in the floodplain.
it worked for what we did, but yeah, and that's also true. There also used to be a homemade bridge just below the dam at the pond for the same reason.
Yeah.
And I think the same thing would apply. Something this big and heavy, you probably don't want to draw more people into walking through wetlands.
Just from my own personal point of view, though, I think the stepping stones were originally there so people could cross on foot.
Yep.
So the idea of moving the bridge in that general area kind of made sense to me personally. It's like, okay, if we can't use the stepping stones anymore, then what about another way to get across? And putting it, even though we can't put it where the stepping stones are now, putting it just downstream from it almost kind of works. I mean, it's not the perfect solution, but I'm not against having a footbridge in there because it is taking the place of the stepping stones that were there originally, if you want to look at it from that point of view.
I think the only immediate need is whether we leave the a design of a pedestrian bridge in our RFP for engineering or whether we pull it out. So maybe we leave it in to see, get conversations with our engineer to see what she or he thinks about it. Or we're going to be paying them to do the work. If we don't intend to have a pedestrian bridge, we should probably save the money. But do we want to continue by going shopping further to see what our options are?
Well, if it's up for a vote, Up for a vote, I'd leave it in there for now, anyway.
That's what I was thinking, but you know, it's going to be one of the more complicated design things, so it's going to have some cost involved, but in theory, we can pull it out at any time, I guess.
But it won't disturb the streams, and any small excavations for a cement pad will be outside the flow of water. So you had said from your previous conversation, they're more excited about us doing that, and they get kind of very concerned if you get into the river flow itself.
Yeah, but that mostly pertains, I think, Paul, to the existing vehicle bridges where we can do excavation in the roadway. We'd be heading into virgin territory with a pedestrian bridge, I presume, and that may be complicated. Well, I think
Carol, do you think that any place we move the bridge along that stream wouldn't be so wet and the bank so fragile that putting it anyplace else wouldn't work?
I kind of think that that's true.
Yeah.
I mean, I think if you want to move a structure like that, you would want, it's a beautiful bridge, but to do it properly and publicly and with DEM's blessing would require that it either be upland on both sides, not be in contact with wetland, and not be putting people in a wetland, you know,
Right.
and I don't know that we're going to find that.
Right.
Then it probably wouldn't go over water.
Well, I mean, it could do what it does now, which goes over water, but from, you know, high dry roadway to high dry roadway. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know where else you're going to find high dry
But
land.
it's still within the distance between a waterway.
Oh, sure.
Isn't there a setback, 50 feet, whatever it is?
It's about to turn into 75, and in
Yeah.
Little Compton, it's 100. So yeah.
Right.
But
So you're going to move a bridge into another place where you have to disturb wetlands.
I
A
also
bridge
just
that's really not necessary.
right.
Nice, but it isn't necessary.
So
And I
that would make it easier to explain to Tom that it turns out it is environmentally really not acceptable.
Well, it's you know, he
except where it is now.
Yeah.
Right. He built it for where it is now. And if the decision is that we need a vehicle access bridge there, then this is not that. And I also think to Sue's earlier point, in addition to all of these, the wetlands concerns, which I think are very real and true, but it's also, you know, if there isn't a place that makes sense because people want to get from here to there, that it would work, then, you know, to look for some place to put it, just to put it somewhere seems
Right.
also not very respectful of the purpose for which it was made. You know, it was a very generous gift, but it was made to solve a problem. So I don't know.
So it sounds, so is it the general consensus of our group that to delete it as wishful thinking from our engineer's scope?
Yes.
I think it sounds like that's the more, I hate to be practical.
It's pretty unusual.
Hate to be practical, but it sounds like there was sort of a dream that may not happen that we have to pay for. So I guess we should pull it out of the document, but maybe we don't need to talk to Tom yet because he may be
Right.
We may be asking him to build in 20 years, asking him for a replacement of a temporary bridge, but I'm more optimistic than that. But all right, I guess we'll pull, Tony, you and I'll pull it out of the document then. I think it'll make any application to DEM much easier.
All right.
All right. Well, that's our last next meeting. How about right after the 17th of December?
Good.
How about the December? How How about December 25th? No, how about the
Sure.
22nd? How about Tuesday, the 22nd at 4 p.m.?
That's the office party, isn't it?
Oh, at your house. Perfect. Okay, 4 p.m. on December 22nd.
Good.
Okay.
Okay, I'm going to rush because I'm running out of power. Is there any other item to bring up today? Then I guess we will vote to.
I move that we adjourn the meeting.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, proper ex-secretary. Any seconder?
I'll second it.
Anyone disagree? The
All in
ayes have it.
favor?
See you soon. Bye.
Okay,
All in
bye.
favor?
Happy Thanksgiving, everyone.